cooking for one or two. Today we will be doing some chicken legs and a squash casserole, and both recipes are very easily doubled or tripled if you have company over. And if it's just for one person, you've got enough for another meal the rest of the week. And I always try, there's just two of us, so I always try to cook enough to have another meal, because some days you just don't feel like cooking. First of all, with the chicken, get you a pan, whatever you want. It says parchment, but I like to use this non-stick aluminum foil. And I'll show you a trick right off the start. I like to line mine. I don't want to get, these are non-stick, but I still like to line it. I don't like to wash dishes. Take your non-stick side and turn your pan upside down and put your foil over it and try to get it as even as you can and press it down. And then pick it up very carefully, flip your pan back over, and it will drop right in, and you're less likely to punch a hole in the corner. And now you have a very nice non-stick pan. All right, for our chicken legs, these are really, really nice chicken legs. And I'm just gonna do 3. Now this recipe, I adjusted this recipe, it was for 6, but I halved it for you, but you can very well double it. I need to put some butter in the microwave. So we're gonna melt our butter for about 16 seconds. Thing with fat, like butter or any meat that has a lot of fat, be sure and cover it up very well in your microwave. I had an accident the other day because I didn't think about my corn had butter in it, and I had corn all over a microwave. So always cover anything that has fat in it. Now for the spices, a paper over here. My spices, we need a ½ teaspoon of paprika, and I only have a 1/4, so I'm going to do this twice. ½ teaspoon of paprika, 1/8 teaspoon of salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, but I have roasted garlic, so I'm going to use a little bit less. I'm going to use my 1/4 teaspoon measuring, but I'm going to use just a little less because this is roasted garlic and it's more potent than if you got the powder. You don't need as much. Onion powder, 1/8 teaspoon. And 1/8 teaspoon of dried thyme. I started to bring some fresh thyme. I've got a bunch growing at the house. And I started to bring some, but I thought, no, I better stick it to the dry. This is the French thyme. It has a little different smell and taste. 1/8 teaspoon of black pepper. And we'll stir those up. This is going to be our seasoning. It smells so good. And I'm going, it just says on one side, I'm going to season both sides. I like both sides of my chicken seasoned. I'll get the top side in just a minute. All right, we've got them seasoned. Now, melted butter. And I have a silicone pastry brush, and we're going to dab a lot of butter. Leave the skin on because you want that to flavor your meat. And if you want a little more butter, that's fine too, because you want it to get brown and crispy. And then we take the rest of our spices and put on the top. If you have any questions, I'm sure you could get a hold of the Cooperative Extension Office, and Haley can answer them. If there's a question directed to one of us Master Food volunteers, Haley can get it to us. All right. Yep. And now you put this in the oven, 375 degrees, or if you're gonna do the next recipe that we'll be doing, which is a squash casserole, just stick them both in there at 350 and leave them for probably 40, 45 minutes. You know, all ovens are different. But be sure to have a thermometer. You want this to cook until, when you stick that in, it says 165 degrees. Let me show you a quick garnish if you're having guests for dinner. Using a spring onion, you can have one this size or a little bit smaller. All you gotta do is trim it up, wash it, and take your knife and go down and make slits in it. And do the other end. And get you I'm gonna have to cut this a little bit. I think it's a little too long for my bowl. Get you a bowl of ice water, and you might want to bend it a little bit. And see, it's already starting to open up like a flower. And put it in you some ice water, and when it gets real cold, you got an onion curl. So we'll leave that in there till we plate up our chicken. That will be our chicken garnish. We'll be right back, start our squash casserole. I went to a farm that's close to my house, and don't you look what beautiful little tender squash. I like this size. The skin's thin, it doesn't have the big seeds, and it doesn't take as long to cook. And to me, they have a better flavor because they've not set out in the sun and gotten real big and tough. So we are going to chop up. I think the recipe, I didn't put on the recipe, but you can slice or you can chop. I like a little chunky. So I take these little baby squash and I cut them in half, and I cut them in half again. And these are so tender. You could eat these raw in a salad or on a vegetable tray. A lot of people don't think about it, that you can eat zucchini and yellow squash raw, but you can. And I just line them up and cut them about this size. And I've already prepared some in the pot, so we wouldn't take up so much of your time watching me chop a squash. So in the pot, I'm gonna put the rest of these. So we're gonna have some onion. I have some already cut, but I'm gonna show you how to cut this. Cut the top off. And I cut just a little bit of that hairy root. And sometimes I'll peel it, you know, like that, and then sometimes I will cut it in half. Now I'm only gonna need half of it. And here's another tip. If you don't need all of the onion, put it in a glass jar with a rubber gasket 2-piece lid or an old pickle jar. Used to, we got peanut butter in glass jars and we could use those. But anything that has a rubber gasket, put the lid on it, tighten it up, put it in your refrigerator, and I can keep onion like this for over a week. It's a good tip, because sometimes you just have some left over. I'm gonna chop down, and I want this kind of small. A lot of chefs will do this 2 or 3 times. I find you got a better chance of cutting yourself. And why do you need to do that? You've already got your layers in there for you. So you don't need to cut it that way. And I just do mine real fine. See there how fine that is? We're gonna put these on to cook and get them real nice and tender and drain them, and we'll be right back and put it all together in just a moment. In the pan, turn it on medium heat. Add 1/4 teaspoon of salt to your squash. Cover it. I put a little bit of water in it. Cover it and let it steam till it comes crisp tender. Let's put our squash casserole together. I have stewed the squash and onion and 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I have drained it the best that I could. And now we're going to add, it calls for 1 egg. Oh, another tip, cracking eggs. You see a lot of pro chefs there again, crack it on the side of a bowl. I always crack it flat on the surface with a paper towel under it. If you crack it on a bowl, you're more likely to push shell up in your egg, and sometimes it's hard to get it out. And you can get a good clean break that way. And to this, we're going to add 1/4 cup of mayonnaise. I went ahead and measured that out to save a little time. I'm gonna mix this all up together. I'm just going to do 1 teaspoon of sugar because these are such tender new squash. We'll put our sugar in there, and let's put a dab of black pepper. We like a lot of black pepper at our house. Stir all this up good to get it really mixed. See, it's kind of runny, but it will thicken up. And then we have 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese. Use what cheese you like. This is pepper jack or jack cheese. There's no pepper in it. Cheddar, and I think a little bit of Asiago, a Mexican cheese. So just use whatever cheese you like. You can shred it or buy it pre-shredded. For this recipe, it's not going to make a difference. All right, this is for 2, and I have this little small dish, and it's non-stick, believe it or not, but I like to put just a dab of spray on it. In the dish. Oh, that's already looking good. I don't like to waste a drop. Now, let's get our topping ready. Got my bowl here, and the recipe calls for cornflakes. We like butter crackers, and I just put them in a bag and just crush them. So let's put our crumbs in here. I think there's a little more than what it calls for because that's what we like. Let me get my melted butter. We'll pour that over. And mix this up real well. A lot of these recipes like this it's really to your personal taste. But now, if you're baking, that's more of a science, or canning, preserving food. I wouldn't leeway very much in baking, and preserving foods don't change anything. Do it word for word what the book says, or you might have a disaster. But cooking a dish like this, if you want a little more crumbs, that's okay. Doesn't matter. All right, let's take our dish here and cover it very well with our good buttery crumbs. And when the time on there will tell you how long to bake it, but I always just bake mine until these crumbs are really golden brown. Put this in the oven at 350 degrees. So your squash are already cooked. So really all you're doing is heating it up. So put it in the oven for 350 degrees until these crackers are really golden brown, and you'll see a little brown edge right around here. Welcome back, everyone. Now let's see what those chicken legs look like. They have baked their time and they registered 165 degrees. Look how brown they are. So let's plate these up. Be sure if you've handled chicken with a pair of tongs raw, don't use it for the same ones that you did cooked. And remember the onion curl that we made? Look how much more curly they got. Dry them really, really good. My home ec teacher always said, have a centerpiece on your table, garnish on your food, and make sure you have a rainbow of colors on your plate. And I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten that. But let's serve you up some chicken legs. Now let's see how our squash looks. Oh my, look at that good brown crust. And when I was telling you to bake it, I said bake it brown like that. And see the little brown around the edges that I was talking about? You know, that is perfect. Now for this squash, it already has onions in it and it looks kind of plain. But I've got a bag of these French fried onions. I could just set and eat them like chips. But I'll put just a few on the top. Or you could put one of those onion curls on it as well. And there is our cheesy squash casserole. Hey, if you have any questions, call the Cooperative Extension Office. And Haley has a staff of Master Food volunteers now that we have trained and we've gotten certified, so we're able to help her to do more programs. And thank you for watching.